Welcome to the Flourish Frequency, the show where we activate and amplify the frequencies of success, joy, and abundance. I'm your host, Beth Larsen, a high-performance and quantum success coach. If you're ready to ditch the hard hustle and embrace a more effortless flow, then this is the show for you. Together, we'll tap into quantum thinking, harness the laws of the universe, and unlock the secrets to living a life of more. More joy, more energy, more passion, more money, and more meaning. No more simply surviving, we're going beyond thriving. It's time to flourish. The Flourish Frequency Show starts now. Yes, welcome back to the Flourish Frequency. It is the show where we explore the power of energy, alignment, and becoming the most fully expressed version of you. I'm your host, Beth Larsen. Today's conversation is especially close to my heart because we're talking about something that I've personally lived, something I've coached through, something I know that so many high-achieving women out there feel deep in their bones, that success without energetic alignment is simply unsustainable. And when the leader is stressed, the entire organization feels it. And I am joined today by former corporate sister in arms, Alycia Diggs-Chavis. I hope I'm saying your name correctly.
Good. I love it.
Okay. And Alycia is an integrative energy practitioner and founder, of Blue Violet Energy. Alycia and I both have walked the path of corporate leadership and both came to the same realization that if you want to lead well, you've got to lead energetically. So in today's episode, we're going to dive into the personal cost of pushing when you're out of alignment, how your frequency sets the tone for your team, your family, and your business, what it means to create cultures and lives that flourish from the inside out. This one is for every woman who's been carrying the weight of performance and perfection, and you're ready to step into a power that really feels regulated, resonant, and real. So let's dive in. Welcome, Alycia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Beth. So good to see you again.
Yeah, I'll tell the audience here that Alycia and I actually met a couple of months ago. Well, February, I guess it was.
February.
At a retreat down in Mexico.
Yeah.
And bonded over our love of energy here. And she actually did some amazing energy work for me.
My
and I
honor.
was so grateful for that and really impressed with her talents and skills and natural abilities, I should say. So I was really thrilled that she agreed to come on the show and so I can share her with the world.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. So happy to be here. Always happy to talk about how women can get their energy in alignment, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
tap into their true selves.
Totally. Yep. And as I mentioned, you and I share something in common in that we were both former corporate people and both really kind of left the corporate life to focus more on energy-based leadership, both personal and professional.
Mm-hmm.
So can you share a little bit about your journey coming from corporate life to energy-based leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. It was quite a long journey, but I think it's where the universe wanted me to be. Pardon me. So I'll go way back, but I'll make it quick. So when I started in the corporate world, I had just left Peace Corps. I came into a corporate OD function. So I was training leaders and intact teams on leadership and how to build effective business plans for performance. But I was just a couple years removed from college and I was young and I was talking to older men mostly. And I decided that, I'm gonna take a drink of water here. I decided that I needed to have some leadership experience under my belt so that I could be credible.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into leadership and then I ended up even though I had all good intentions of coming back into the OD field, I ended up staying there for 20 years and I climbed the ladder. I did all the things. I was the good girl. I followed all the corporate rules and ended up in, VP of operations roles and that type of thing towards the end of my career. And, one day I was just like, you know what? I've had it with all of the stress and the physical toll and the disrespect and just all of the things that had happened, knowing that it was all lessons, right? And I'm grateful for all the lessons. So don't get me wrong. It led me to where I am right now. So I'm really grateful for the lessons. But I decided that it was time for me to kind of step away from leading other teams and just really kind of step back into my own sovereignty. And so I moved into a consulting role where I was, again, coaching leaders and teams and that type of thing. And it was through that process and at that time in my life when I became an empty nester.
Ah,
And I kind of wigged out, and I didn't know wigging out over being an empty nester was a thing until it happened to me. And when it
yeah.
happened to me, I had an amazing woman coach who basically said, look, this is not about you trying to figure out how to get along better with your husband or look at a different job, or this is about you going inward. And when I
Mm.
went inward and I spent time with me, I dated myself, dated as
Oh,
in I took myself out on dates, those types of things, and just spent more time with me, getting to know me, because I had spent all of my energy focused outward on my roles or my children or all of those things up until then. And again, I'm blessed to have had all of those opportunities and all of those lessons, so I don't speak ill of them. But I just hadn't spent that same amount of time on me. And when
yeah.
I did that, that's when my gifts became apparent to me. That's when they really started opening up. And I was able to do a couple of things. One, look back over my career
Mm.
and see where I had been using my gifts, and I just didn't know it. I didn't have the
Mm.
words for it then. And then two, it really got me in that space of I'm working with these leaders, I'm coaching these leaders and these teams, and we're doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing. We're looking at the behavioral science behind why things happen and what they're doing. But there's a big missing piece, because if you're stressed as a leader and if your energy is not right, then all the behavioral science in the world doesn't make a difference, because you can't even focus on that. You can't focus on strategy. You can't focus on building relationships if you don't have that relationship with yourself, and if you're not energetically in a good place to do that. So I started merging the two,
Oh, yeah.
and that's how I got to where I am.
Yeah. I always say soul first, strategy second.
Right. Right.
Like so
Absolutely.
much. And that would not have been what I would have said back in the day, but for sure it's I can't even imagine going back and doing it the opposite way anymore.
Yeah, it would be difficult.
Yeah.
Impossible, probably.
When you say your gifts, share a little bit more about what you discovered about yourself. Like what are these gifts?
So it's the gifts that we all have, but maybe they just weren't trained up in us, and maybe they were even like squashed at young ages,
Mm.
and we didn't lean into them. So it's all of our intuitive gifts and our abilities to tap into energy and information in realms that are outside of what we call our normal five senses, right? So it's all the
Mhm.
clairs, the clairvoyant, the clairsentient, the claircognizant, all of those gifts. And for me, it started with when I was really, really aware of it. It started with me being able to sense, feel what was out of alignment in someone's energetic system,
Mm.
energetic body, with my hands, like feeling with my hands. And then
Okay.
it became a feeling of I could feel it in my body. So I could be around someone and I could feel if they had a heart chakra blockage, for example, I could feel the pressure in my chest, or if they were having hip problems physically, I could feel it.
So you
And
were feeling it in you.
I was feeling it both. It started off with me being able to just kind of sense it with my hands. And then I started
Yeah.
feeling it physically within me. And then the floodgates opened, and all of the information and the downloads and the connection to higher source and information, and even kind of unseen energies around us bringing in messages for the people that I was working with. So the more that I've done the work, the more my abilities have kind of stepped to the forefront and broadened. It's been amazing. It's been an
Wow.
amazing cycle. Yeah.
And you said you could, like, looking back on it, you could see that you had these gifts all along, but you didn't necessarily realize it at the time.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
correct? Like, so
Yeah.
when you think back on it, like, how did it show up? I'm curious for like the audience who, may not be realizing that they also have these gifts.
Mm.
When you look at it in hindsight, what might have been some of the ways that it expressed itself.
That it changed. Yeah. So part of it was actually even before I was grown and in the kind of in the corporate world. I can remember the stories that my parents told of me, like waking up and saying, "Oh, I saw grandma here who had
Mm.
passed, right, years ago. I saw grandma here last night." Or, Aunt Barry came when we were at her house for her funeral. Aunt Barry came last night and looked in all the windows and the doors and said hi to everybody. So from
Wow.
that very young age, I was perceiving it, but my parents had no concept of even what it was. And so they just kind of were like, huh, okay. At least they didn't discourage it. They didn't call me crazy. Some people get called crazy at a young age
Yeah.
and they'll turn their gifts off. They'll turn their ability to access them off. But as I got older, it came through sometimes as just knowings of information. So I'll give you an example for my kids afraid to go to bed at night. And I
Mm.
would literally just kind of start leaning over them and saying, okay, call in the blue angel, call in the red angel, call in the yellow angel. And I didn't know what that means, but I just what it meant, but I just did it. In the workplace, um, it was an ability, it came through in what we would think as an ability to listen and synthesize information and then kind of spit out some either conclusions or suggestions, which
Mm.
is a skill that can be developed, absolutely. But for me, it was more of it was almost like I was channeling information out, right? So
Wow.
I would sit and listen and then come up with solutions, and everybody would be like, where did that come? Like, that's not even on the radar anywhere. And it would come out that way. When it came to
Mm.
interacting with other people, it was more of I always got the feedback. Um, I can come into your office and I know I've done something wrong and I need to talk to you or you've asked to talk to me, but I always leave feeling better than
Mm.
I walked in. Right.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
again, we can call that a skill. That is absolutely a skill that you can learn as a leader. But what I realized looking back is if my energy wasn't aligned in those moments to help people get their energy there as well and be in that space, then they might not have felt that way leaving out
Yeah.
regardless. So
Wow.
subtle sometimes.
Yeah. And you said you were at one point VP of operations, which is a very strategy type of business. Like there could not be a more
Yeah,
strategic role, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
when you think back in your time in that role in particular, like were you very much in the strategy or were you fusing the two even at that point in time?
Yeah, I think I was fusing the two even at the time. I mean, the
Yeah.
strategic piece of it was it was there, right? So think, large scale government health and human services projects working with the population of like half of the United States. Like, so really large scale,
Wow.
very highly regulated and from highly regulated work. But intuitively, I was able to bring in people that were the technical experts, and
Mm.
then I could pull them all together and we would have our roundtables. And then if I needed to make a decision or decide on a direction, strategic direction, if the team couldn't come with it, or if I felt like we needed to go a little bit of a different direction, I could do that. And I could do it from a non-strategic perspective, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like,
Yeah.
I hear everybody, this is the way I feel, this is what I think is going to get us to where we need to be.
Yeah.
So on that side. And then the other side, I would say, from a strategic perspective in those types of roles, it's always about your client, right? So as
Mm.
government, we were a government contractor working with government oversight folks. And so being able to kind of very intuitively understand how to build that relationship, how to maintain that relationship, how to grow that relationship, and how to connect with those people on an energetic level uh,
Yeah.
to build capital was very important. So um, challenging sometimes, but good, fun.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you said that when we were talking, like I have shared before that for me, I had to reach burnout before I actually left. So
Hmm.
that would for me was like I was out of alignment for a while before it eventually ended up in burnout, but it didn't get to full on burnout for you, right? Is that correct? Or
Correct. It didn't get to full on burnout, but I had definite points of where I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was crazy. I still didn't even recognize that. Like migraines, constant migraines
yeah,
had, just alignment with the people and even my leaders. I had managers of my own, leaders of my own that were we were just totally diametrically opposed. And talk about lack of alignment there.
yeah, yep,
But I did the good girl thing, right? And I just
yep.
plugged along and just kept going with it. So I did have those moments. I think it was when I got out, it was an intuitive, it's time for me to really pull my energy back in versus
Mm,
sharing it out with everybody. And I loved the teams that I worked with, don't get me wrong. But
yeah,
it was time for me to really just say, okay, I need to kind of do that exploration for myself and be in charge of me.
yeah,
And then the universe hit me with the empty nester thing, so that I
yeah,
was already in the space of being charged of me. And then I had to really go deep with
yeah.
who I was. Yeah, absolutely.
I know when I got out, my mentality was I'm going to fix what I broke and then go back and do it better. That
Uh,
was initially my thought. Now I'm so glad I didn't stay with that thought because it led me down a very different path, and I couldn't, you know, I would not be experiencing anything in my life that I am experiencing now if I had gone back into that old way of thinking, and I
right.
wouldn't have nearly the expansion,
Mhm.
experienced. So I'm just curious, like, did you at some point like have any thoughts of like, oh, I want to go back into it, or were you completely, no, I'm in a whole different trajectory in my life at this point?
Yeah, I never felt like I want to go back into it and be a leader again in the corporate world. I knew that I wanted to be doing something different. I might not have known exactly what that was, but I knew that it was time for me to just kind of be in my own space. So my way of impacting now is working with those leaders who are
Yeah,
still in that space to try to help them create the environments for themselves and then for their teams and organizations.
yeah.
So I'm trying to influence from the outside.
I love it. I love it. Well, I think we're going to take a quick break here. And what I would love when we come back is we talk a little bit about the personal energy part of it, and maybe even exploring and diving into how did you start to expand your gifts? That whole part that you said about going inward and
Yeah.
dating yourself and all that. Like, what did that look like a little bit more if we can dive into that? So we'll take a quick break and we'll be back. All right. Well, we are back with Alycia here and diving into this fascinating conversation about energy and leadership in particular. And I want to talk about that more because I'm sure we have a lot of people in the audience listening that are either in leadership roles or they're in jobs and companies and corporations. Whether they're the leader themselves, they may actually be responsible for self-leading.
Mhm.
And I think that's important as well. So how do you lead yourself within an organization, whether you have the official title of a leader or not?
Mhm.
But let's look at that first kind of through the lens of like, what did that look like for you when you were starting to open up to your gifts? Because you're saying that everybody has this capacity and everybody has the ability to do it. So I'm sure everybody wants to know, how can I do
How
it?
can I do it? Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you if I can tell you a little story about how I really like how it all opened up to me. Just a little bit of a backstory here. So when I was doing my again back to my empty nester thing and taking myself out on dates, one of the things that I realized with the help of my coach was that I had never taken a trip by myself. I'd never traveled outside of like going
Oh,
to college and that type of thing. I'd never as an adult, I had a full-on adult, I had never really traveled. And so I'm like, okay, I think I need to go somewhere. And literally I got a download that said, you need to go to Sedona in Arizona.
oh, wow.
And if you know anything about Sedona, you know that it is highly energetically charged and all
Yep.
kinds of fun things to do there, right? I had no idea what Sedona was. I just knew that I needed to go there. So I planned a trip there. I went for like 5 days by myself. It was amazing. It was so freeing. It was like the best way to get in touch with who I was. But on my last day there, I was working with a practitioner who was doing some sound work for me, and I was laying out on the red rocks in Sedona. And we got done, and she said, "Are you a healer?" And I was like, "I don't think so, and I'm still not really sure what that is, but so I
Yeah.
think I have to say no." And she was like, "Huh, interesting." She said, "Well, you should check out this book, and then you should look into sacred geometry." And I was like,
Oh.
"What's sacred geometry?" And she said, "Yeah, you just research it and figure it out. You'll figure it out." So I'm a good student. I tried. I went and I researched, but nothing of what I was finding was resonating. It all seemed really complicated. It seemed just like um it just wasn't, none of it was hitting like in a way that I could easily go, "Oh, okay, this is what it is." So I left it
Mhm.
aside. One day I was doing the dishes here at my house by myself, and I needed something to listen to. And so I just flipped onto Facebook, and I was looking through some little videos, and I got one of the videos that said, "Answer these 5 questions." And so I start listening, and the guy's like, "Hey, do you ever think of somebody and they call you? Hey, do you ever just instantly know an answer to a question and you don't know how you know? Hey, and he kept going on. And every time I would say, "Well, yeah, yeah, yeah." And I get to the third or fourth, yeah. And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what's going on here?" And he gets through his questions, and then he stops talking, or he talks a little bit more, and he says, "Blah, blah, 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 sacred geometry."
Whoa.
And as soon as he said that, I kid you not, my body just went, and then the tears started flowing down my face. I had
Mm,
instant recognition of that's what I've been looking for. And so that's how I really got started. I signed up to work with him. He's my mentor to this day. And
wow.
that's how I learned little by little kind of the process of doing energy healing, which then taps you into what your gifts really are. Because at a certain point, it doesn't matter what the process is when you're
Yeah.
connected with what your gifts are. Does that
Yeah.
answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And so there's energy healing, and then there's energy as it relates to leadership. How did the two kind of come together? Like,
Mhm. Yeah,
where's that
yeah, yep, yep.
intersection, if you will?
That's a great question. So we are energy, right? And
Mm,
our energy is always in a certain state, aligned or not aligned. Or maybe a little bit out of alignment and to different
yeah.
degrees, right? And the state of our energy is really what people around us see and feel, even if we're not purposely portraying it that way. And even if they really don't even know
Yeah.
that they're perceiving it, right? So you've walked into a room of people before and you go, "Ooh, something's funky in here."
Yeah.
Like you can feel it, or like, "Ooh, the vibe is off," or whatever that looks like for you. Or, "Hey, this is a really great space. Like it feels really
Yeah.
good in here." It's the energy, everybody's energy coming together that kind of creates that. So when we talk about like working with energy, when I talk about working with energy, I really want to help people get their energy back in alignment so that what people are feeling and perceiving from them, even if they don't know that they're feeling and perceiving it,
Yeah.
is in that hey, this feels really good. Because as a leader, you walk in with your energy and everybody around you senses it and feels it.
Hmm.
And so kind of aligning and working and doing energetic hygiene is one of the ways that I like to talk about, or doing oil
Okay.
change for your energetic body.
An oil change for your energy. I like it.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So that things are flowing and moving smoothly from an energetic perspective. And that's how you keep yourself in a nice high vibrational state so that you can be your best for the folks that you're with, whether it's your family, whether it's your team
Yeah.
or org. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, and again, we both met at a retreat that was a lot of energy work being done. And I think that says a lot. I just would say this out to the audience, the fact that we both prioritize taking care of ourselves too, so that we can show up and, be there for our clients individually.
Yeah.
Um, it's important, right? It's like you got to take, it's just like they tell you to put the um your seatbelt on first, your oxygen mask on first. Like you've got to take care of yourself and
Yeah.
your own energy. So what does energy hygiene look like for you
That's a great question.
aside from going to a retreat
I'm going to retreat. Yeah.
on a regular basis?
Yeah. So it's in the daily practices, right?
Mm,
It's in the how you start your day is a big piece, right?
mm,
Because the way your morning goes, your day flows. And
love
so,
it.
if
Mm,
you start your morning with the diving into what's going on in the world and the news and all of the things that can bring stress to you, then that's kind of how your energy settles in for the day, and that's how it flows for the day. If you start
mhm.
your day with things that bring you joy, with things that are peaceful for you, then that's how your energy sets in for the day. It doesn't mean you're not going to have your ups and downs during the day, but you're able to
Yeah.
come back to center a whole lot better if you start that way. So for me, that looks like having some coffee out on my deck in the
Mm,
sunshine, no TV in the morning. I might
yeah.
put some nice meditation music or just something. I, play with the dogs. I just do the things that just bring me joy to get started. And then I
Yeah.
dive into all of the rest of the stuff. Um, whether it's work, whether it is catching up on what's going on, in the world, that type of thing. I will say that I have become an avowed, I'm not watching the news type of person, right?
Mm, right
So
there with you.
yeah, yeah. So and there's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of the epitome of energy hygiene, I think, these days, is that just being focused on what's going on with you and your environment. It doesn't mean you have to put your head in the sand and not know what's going on, but it does mean that you don't put yourself in a place where you spin in everything that's going on and that you're hearing all the gossip and you're following all of
Yeah.
the politics and you're doing all of those kind of lower vibrational things, because that's what you're planning into your subconscious, and our minds create our realities, our thoughts create our realities, and if that's what we're thinking, then that's what we're going to get in our environment. So
100%. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like I will, if I'm going to go on and watch any news at all, I make sure I watch just a little bit of each of the different
mhm,
channels,
yeah,
short periods, very, very short, just a
right,
couple of minutes, because I want to be able to see how they're each spinning it, because they will take the exact same topic and spin it from two completely different angles.
it's true.
And then I have to check in with myself
Yep.
and back in and see what feels true for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I don't want to be completely blind to what's going on in the world. And yet it's all circumstantial. And I know I personally don't live from my circumstances. I'm all about creating.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what do I want to create? Because if I'm living from my circumstances, I'm only going to just keep getting more of the circumstances, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a
So
perfect example of kind of living in a place of neutrality.
yeah,
And that's gold when it comes to your energy and your energetic hygiene. To the
yeah,
extent that you can be neutral about anything and everything that happens, right? Doesn't mean you're not happy about things, but I would say neutral about the things that maybe might tend to kind of lower your vibration a little bit, or just
yeah,
annoy you, right? Oh my gosh, the lady at the grocery store just gave me side eye. What did I do?
yeah,
Don't even go, right? Just kind of staying very, very neutral,
yeah,
um, and curious. Uh,
yeah.
I,
Curious, I know. I think that is so important to be curious. And I've heard before, you see this a lot, like, well, that's spiritual bypassing, pretending stuff doesn't exist. And to me, it's not that at all. Like there's no pretending that it's not existing. There's no pretending that the reality isn't what's currently happening.
right,
And there's no power if I give all my power over to it.
right.
Like I can't lead myself through it if I'm giving my power over to the circumstances.
Absolutely. Standing strong in your own power and your own vibration. And what that helps to do. So,
Mm,
my first teacher was really good about saying, heal yourself, heal others, heal the world. And so
mm,
it starts with you. And if you are maintaining you're doing your own hygiene, right? You're keeping
yeah,
yourself good and high vibrational. you're impacting the people around you, whether they know it or not, and you're impacting the larger world, whether they know it or not. And even
Yeah,
if you just look at it from that perspective, that's a great reason to not kind of dive into some of the more, negative stuff that's going on, not only for you, but for everybody else around you. And
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's just, yeah, it's gold if you can
Yeah.
do. It's not always possible to do
Yeah.
all the time. We're human, right?
Yeah.
To be able to pull ourselves back from that quickly is
Well, yeah. And so I love how you start your day. And then, throughout the day, if your energy gets hijacked,
yeah.
if you get sucked up into the circumstance or something, if you're at work and there's some sort of crisis or whatever, and as a leader, you have to be able to stay in your power and not
Mhm.
get sucked up into it. But we're humans at the same time, right? So when somebody's energy is getting hijacked, first off, how do you help them see that that's what's happening and
Mhm.
then lead themselves back?
Mhm. Yeah. That it really is about centering and coming back to themselves.
Mm.
And so it can be a very simple process of, okay, let's get you in a space where nobody else is. Like I've had to work, literally, I've had to tell leaders, okay, go home, get away from the office right now
Mm.
because craziness there is not serving you. Go home, get in a quiet space, and then I can take them through a process of, okay, let's do some breathing. And then I can go in and take a look at what's going on with their energy,
Yeah.
um, clear out anything that is standing in the way of them de-stressing,
Hmm.
and having them literally just kind of tap in and observe what's going on. Because more often than not, when I'm doing work like that with folks, in some way, shape, or form, because they have the gift, we all have the gifts, right?
Yeah.
They might see it, they might see colors, they might feel things in their body, sensations in their body, they might have emotion that releases. It looks different for everybody. Our gifts work differently for each person, but they tend to have experiences that makes them say, okay, wait, this is real, and wait a minute, I can perceive this stuff on a totally different level. So it opens up a world to them that they did not know that they could tap into before. That's all within them.
Yeah.
And that immediately helps to de-stress. And then from there, once we get them in a level state, we can come back and talk about it. And then we can say, okay, now here are the things to do to help get yourself back there or to help tap into that
Hmm.
whenever you need to.
Do you have a favorite tool or tip that you would give people that helps them get back into state?
Absolutely. I think even if let's say we're going back to the office now, people are, being called back into the office.
Yeah.
So if you can, something's going on, go find a quiet corner. If you can go outside and take your shoes off and put your feet in the grass, even better.
Mm.
Close your eyes, take a few breaths because breath is medicine, right? Breath is
Yes, yes,
medicine.
yes.
Yes, it is. Just take a few nice deep breaths, nice and slow and measured, and slow your breathing down. Close
Yeah.
your eyes, and then just see a bubble coming up around you with your eyes closed. Whatever color feels right to you, because there's magic to that, right?
Yeah.
The color, there's nothing by, by accident. See this bubble, see your bubble of whatever color comes around you, and then just sit and feel into that. And if you need to just sit there and breathe for a
Yeah.
few minutes, 2, 3 minutes, sometimes that's all it takes. And just know that that bubble is putting you in your little cocoon, and it is disconnecting you from any other energy that might have been
Mm.
impacting you and helping you to clear that and come back to your center. So that's a real simple way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. I wish when I had been back in corporate for all those years, I think back on it and we did so many different types of leadership trainings and, the Myers-Briggs and the Strengths Finders and all of that, which nothing against any of that because they're fantastic tools. And yet we didn't do any kind of training with energy and breath and all of that. And, stress relief was one thing, but I mean, we didn't approach it from this angle, at least not in my day. I
Yeah. No,
feel
not
like
in
I'm dating myself, but
Not in my day either. And I'll tell you, it's still not happening in a lot of corporations,
Yeah.
more than used to be, but
Yeah.
it's not very widespread in companies big and small these days. So
Yeah.
people are in more on an individual level are kind of diving into it, and there's still that taboo. There's still that like, oh, that's so woo woo. Why would I do that? I can't even. If I could tell you how many people and leaders I've talked to inside of organizations that you have that recognition of you're both kind of speaking the same language with like
Yeah.
talking around it but speaking the same language. Many of the leaders that I've worked with are like, oh, that's interesting, or oh yeah, I know, or oh, I have crystals, or those types of things, but they would never say that in their
Yeah.
workplace, right? And so
Yeah.
it just doesn't transfer over to the workplace just because of the norms and the cultures that have existed there
Yeah.
for such a long time.
It's so interesting. So I think we're going to take another quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about like, okay, transitioning from self into creating sustainable soul aligned systems and businesses, because I do think that there is an uprising of companies who are like the tide is turning. And I do see more and more,
Yep.
but it's much more from the younger generation
Yes, it is.
coming in with new ideas and not afraid to go down this route. And I think a lot of the high tech companies, AI, all of that is kind of opening the door
Hmm.
for a whole different way of seeing things and interacting with things. And yeah, I'm seeing a change, a big change. And I think for anyone listening out there, if you're in a company, like if you plug into this now, you're going to be setting yourself and your company up for massive growth
Yeah.
over the next few years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so let's take a quick break and then let's dive a little bit more into that.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right, we're back talking here with Alycia. And we were talking before the break a lot of energy and kind of like self energy hygiene and how do you regulate yourself. But let's talk about this from more of a global perspective, more of a corporate perspective. You know, maybe you're in a company, and again, maybe you're in the leadership role or you're not, but you may have the ability to shift the energy of a company and shift the energy of an organization. What would you say an energetically hygienic or energetically well organization looks and feels like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it starts it kind of in two. I'll address it from two different perspectives. First, from the perspective of what we would traditionally think of around kind of how you structure a team or an organization, that type of thing, and how you build a business plan there. To me, it looks like um, having a balance between the technical side of things and the people side of things. And so when the technical side of things, it means what are your systems? What are your processes? What process improvement do you have in place? All that, what's the strategy? All of those things that normally and traditionally we would talk about. Some companies talk about the people side.
Mm.
Some companies don't, they talk about it, but they don't execute well on the people side. And then some companies really do execute well on the people side. And so on the people side, really talking about things like what are the values that you're bringing to the organization? What are common values as an organization? And not only talking about them, but what are those values in practice? What do the behaviors look like that
Mm.
demonstrate those values or that don't demonstrate those values? And then having a communication system in place that addresses, are we living the values? Are we giving feedback to each other when we're not living our values? And are we giving feedback to each other when we are living our values? And then do we have all of the other communication pieces in place as well that we need to have for the technical stuff too? So communication is not just about, just the interpersonal and that type of thing, but really having a balance between the two of those, I think is kind of a really great place to start, especially in organizations
Mm.
where leadership doesn't quite yet talk about the energy of a
Yeah.
leader. So the layer on top of that, though, is the leadership, right? And
Yeah.
how the leader is setting that environment on the people side to
Yeah.
either normalize or not normalize energy practices, whether you call them energy practices, whether you call them stress relief, whether you call it whatever you call them, it doesn't make a difference because they're all kind of intertwined. But to the
Yeah.
extent that the leader is normalizing that in the organization and putting in place systems for people to be able either to do or to have access to that,
Yeah.
to me, that's kind of the blueprint, big picture blueprint for a company that has great energy hygiene.
Yeah. And that was one of my questions really is like, how can frequency, I call it frequency work,
Yeah.
or energy work, how can you bring it into mainstream leadership without seeming too woo for
Yeah.
people who are not quite there yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you some examples of how I've done it with leadership teams, working
Yeah.
with different leadership teams. So let's say I'm going in to help with maybe some communication, help them put a communication plan in place and help to open the lines of communication and feedback in a team because
Mm,
that's a constant struggle in many organizations, right? How do we communicate
yeah.
openly so that we can tap into our creativity and do all those things? So I've gone in with day-long sessions around communication and creativity and all those types of things. But at the very beginning, I'll start off with an exercise to put them in a state of opening up their creative minds.
Ah,
As
he's
the
sneaking in on them.
sneak it in on them a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and so it can look very different. Sometimes it is, let's just sit and breathe for a little bit. Y'all are stressed leaders. You're working hard. We're going to do some deep work here, some intense work here, and talk about some of the problems in the organization. Let's all just breathe a little bit to get into take that medicine in and get into a nice calm state so we can approach things from a calm state versus oh my gosh, we have to talk about our problems, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun. Some people consider fun stuff like printed mandalas. I'll take little pictures of black and white pictures of a mandala and throw crayons and markers on the table
Yeah.
and let people just literally kind of color and just get into that different creative part of their mind. And energetically, that's
Yeah.
that's clearing out some stuff for them. That's helping them get into that really centered space. I've taken singing bowls in and, in addition to the breathing, just said, "Hey, just listen
Yeah.
sounds, right? And just listen to the sounds." And I can, I've walked through the room with different bowls and using just different sounds and tones to just help them relax. And you can see the shoulders drop and you can see the people just kind of lean their
You see the
side.
deep breath come. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the breath happening. Yeah, so you can sneak it in little ways
Yeah.
like that to get started. And starting in little ways like that in many instances
Yeah.
has led me to the leaders coming back and saying, we need to do some deeper work and let's do it for the whole team kind of thing.
That's awesome.
And
So fantastic. I was saying before the break, I think that there is a shift in the way that some companies are really, embracing and opening up to more things. And I think of companies like a Google, right? It's like they're
Mhm.
famous for you go into their environment and it is not like any other working environment.
Right.
And they really embrace outside of the box stuff and doing things differently and look at what's come out of that.
Hmm.
And I think as we continue to evolve as a society, even, it's like if we keep doing things the same way we used to do them, nothing evolves. And so expanding on creativity is so important and being able to open up and see things differently is
Hmm.
important. And that's not just seeing it from a different perspective, it's actually literally seeing things differently, like you were saying, seeing energy
Hmm. Hmm.
or feeling energy.
Hmm.
It gives you the ability to actually start to shift what you're seeing,
Right.
right? And create something different out of it.
Right.
So
Right.
has sacred geometry come up in any of that? I'm curious with any of your work with companies or
With
leaders.
absolutely all the time. It's the basis of the work that I do. And
Love
interestingly
it.
enough, I've had leaders in sessions and we might be just doing just kind of stress relief, like I'm stressed. And so we
Yeah.
can get into a stress relief session. I'll use sacred geometry tools and I've had leaders say, well, I saw this cube like that was just floating in front of me, or I don't know, for some reason, like a ball, like there was a bouncy ball in my field, or, they, in different ways, they perceive it. They perceive the geometries. And then sometimes it's, like I said, just more of the kind of the physical feelings. It might be just emotional releases around things that they just need to let go of so that they can move
Yeah.
forward and just de-stress. But sacred geometry, absolutely, it's the basis for everything that I do.
I love that. I love that. So what would you say is your vision for the future of leadership?
My vision for the future of leadership is that every company that has their leadership development classes, courses, whatever you call it, their universities, that it does include this whole energetic piece to it. Back in the day, I used to talk to leaders about any organization being a reflection of its leadership, whether it was one
Mm,
person or a team of leaders. And that's very true. But back in the day, we weren't talking about it, like you said before, from an energetic perspective. It was
yeah.
about, is the leader like, is the leader snarky? And so
Yeah.
the organization will be that way. Is the leader fast moving, fast paced? So the organization will be that way. So my thing is, let's add into that question, does the leader have mastery over his or her own energy, and at least
Yeah.
understand it? Maybe mastery is not the best word, but at least understand it and understand the impact of it. And more importantly, can that leader find their energetic edge?
Yeah.
Because when we dive into our energy and we lean into our abilities, and it doesn't mean that everybody has to be a healer or an energy worker, but it does mean that we all have access to information that, from a leadership perspective, all the answers are within us if we
Right.
can sit still and find them, right? And so
Right.
to me, that would be part of the practice of leadership development at
Mm,
all levels of leadership.
love
Um,
that.
and if anybody wants to take me up on that, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, love that. Love that. And you know, it's teaching I feel like it's teaching people how to lead from frequency first
Hmm.
so they don't have to lead from force. Because
Exactly. Exactly.
force is not it's not power, it's literally doing it the hard way. If we take it to the energy, you can let the energy do the heavy lifting for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll add to that, it's the difference between sometimes making decisions from your head and from your heart.
Oh yeah.
Because when we make decisions, and here's a little test for us, right? When we're trying to make a decision and we're doing that, well, what if this? Well, what if that? But what about this? That's the brain running through all of our files and our past experiences. But when you
Yep.
get quiet and get still and you ask your question, the first thing that comes to you, that's your heart talking to you, right?
Yeah.
If leaders led that way, how much easier would it be, for heaven's sakes, right?
This has hands down been my biggest lesson that that has opened up everything for me is getting out of my head and making
Mhm.
decisions because the head will often take you in the opposite direction.
Right, right, right.
It will lead you exactly toward the thing that is your heart does not want, and or it's going to lead you away from the thing that your heart does want.
Hmm.
And it's the heart that should be taking sorry, it's the head that should be taking the directions from the heart and not the other way around.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and the head's just really trying to protect us, right? The
Yeah.
head is trying to say, when I've done this before, then this is what happened and it didn't feel good, or it didn't get
Yeah.
the result that I wanted. Well, it's not always about getting the result that you want or that you think you want, but the heart will tell you, if this is what you want, this is the decision for now.
Yeah.
Because that will get you there, but you have to continue to rely on your heart for
Yeah.
those decisions. And that can be in direct opposition to making money
Yep.
immediately, to like some of the things that we're so conditioned as leaders, as important things, right? in
Yeah.
in company world. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's wrong to make money, and I'm not saying that you can't make money in a heart-centered and a heart-led company, because you absolutely can. You talk
Yeah.
Google. Yeah, you talked about Google, right? You
Totally. Yeah.
absolutely can.
Yeah, and my belief is that the money is just the byproduct, and I've seen it over and over and over and over again. When you're in full alignment, money is the natural byproduct.
Right.
So If it's not showing up that way, then there's deeper, there's a belief system somewhere that's out of alignment,
Exactly.
right? Or your energy is somewhere out of alignment. So,
Yep.
well, which comes from the beliefs as well. So that
Yeah.
could be a whole other show. I feel like there's so much more that
Hours.
we could dive into. I love it. What's one shift that we could all start with today? One thing that you would say, hey, this is a simple thing that you could do today to shift into more energetic alignment for yourself.
Mm. I think I would say the pause,
Mm,
taking the pause, right? So if something is hitting you some kind of way, whether somebody said something to you or you're at work and somebody made a decision and you're like, what the heck? How does that, why?
yeah.
Right? Taking the pause and asking yourself the question, why am I reacting this way?
Mm,
What is it in me? What belief is it that I have? Why is this challenging for me? And just taking that pause to ask the question and really be reflective. Now, you may not come up with the answer right away, but you're planting the seed, and I
yeah.
guarantee you that eventually it will come to you, because that's one of the biggest ways. If we recognize, um, I'll call it our triggers, right? If we
Yeah.
recognize what our triggers are and then why we get triggered by certain things, that's the fastest path to undoing them, right? So
Yeah.
that they don't continue to impact you, so that you don't get stressed when something happens the way that you don't want it to happen, and you can stay in that more neutral
Yeah.
territory in a level state.
Yeah. The power of the pause. The pause is what unhooks you from the reaction so you can actually respond,
Yeah,
right? So you
yeah.
can do it from a more intentional place.
And
Beautiful.
sometimes, and if I can add this, if you find it difficult to just like pause like that and kind of get out of that mode, that thinking mode, then think the pattern interrupt, right?
Mm, yeah.
Go above and beyond and say, not only am I going to just pause, but I'm going to step away from my desk and do 10 jumping jacks, or
Yeah.
I'm going to laugh hysterically. I'm going to do something that totally takes my mind away from whatever just kind of struck me, whatever just triggered
Yeah.
me, so that I can disconnect from it. And really, you're kind of rewiring your the synapses
Yeah.
in your brain when you do that, right? You don't encourage that continued reaction. So it has a physical benefit as well that can help,
Beautiful.
yeah, help you stay neutral.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I could go for another hour with you. So, Alycia, how can listeners connect with your work? Where can they
Absolutely.
find you?
So yeah, my website is bluevioletenergy.com. And I'm sorry, blueviolet.com. My email is bluevioletenergy@gmail.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Alycia Diggs-Chavis, with a hyphen in between the Diggs and the Chavis. And I am more than welcome to chat with folks, answer questions. Um, yeah, and
Beautiful.
just explore possibilities as well.
Love that. Love that. Well, if that episode didn't make you want to light a candle, take a breath, and check your own frequency, I don't know what will. A huge thank you here to Alycia for joining me in this powerful conversation about embodied leadership, energy awareness, and what it really means to flourish, not just for yourself, but for every space you lead. And here's your reminder: your energy is not a side effect of your success, it's the source of it. And when you lead yourself well, everything around you begins to shift. So if this episode sparked something in you, I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway. You can screenshot the episode, tag me at Beth Larsen Coach, tag Alycia at Blue Violet Energy, and tell us what resonated most. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share with somebody you know who leads with heart. Until next time, stay aligned, stay attuned, and stay in your Flourish frequency. Thank you for tuning in to the Flourish Frequency Show with me, Beth Larsen. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and are leaving with a heart full of inspiration and a mind buzzing with the possibilities of more. Tune in every third Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more frequency boosting conversations. And if you want more help getting into your Flourish flow and stepping into the possibilities of more, you can find me at BethLarsenCoaching.com. That's BethLarsenCoaching.com, Larsen with an E.